By listening to this podcast, you agree to not use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in yourself or others, including, but not limited to, patients that you are treating. Consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast. Under no circumstances shall any guests or contributors to the podcast or any employees, associates, or affiliates of the Neuroendocrine Cancer Awareness Network be responsible for damages arising from use of this podcast. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Nets Get Real with NCAN. I'm your host, Mike Wayman. Before we get into this month's episode, a little bit of housekeeping. Our next event is going to be in San Diego, California. We're going to have another NET patient conference. We've got Dr. Oh, man. I'm going to cut this. We've got Dr. Mary Maluccio and three other awesome NET specialists, all doing some great presentations, and we're going to have some really cool panels for this particular conference. So again, if you're in the San Diego area, or if you're not, head over to netcancerawareness.org to get more information about it. Also, hit us up on the social medias that we have at NetCancerAware. Today, we are going to be joined by a NET patient, a NET specialist in her own right, Alexandria Jungling. She is from the Virginia area and a part of the North Carolina, Virginia group. So, without further ado, Alex, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I think it's really awesome that you're going to be a part of this because the younger voice is not really usually highlighted in diseases and things of this nature. So, being under 30 and, going through what you've gone through and stuff like that, I think it's really important that you are here talking to us about it. So, real quick, just give us a little background about your NET journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a NET primary, and I was diagnosed December 2nd of 2019. And with that was less than a month after I got married. Me and my husband got married November 9th of 2019. And a week after our honeymoon, I was in the hospital with chest pain. And turns out there was a large mass. Did a biopsy, came back. They liked the term carcinoid or good cancer, was how we were told. Mm-hmm. And January of 2020, I had my left lung completely removed, 16 lymph nodes. And then, of course, COVID 2 months later. So, right. Yes, we got married, cancer, COVID. So we love that. And living in a world, I now have one lung and COVID. So that was an adventure on navigating treatment.
I'm sure.
The world, I was like, I was terrified. And then currently, so I'm almost 3.5 years out now. And I currently am considered NED. There are 2 spots on my liver that we watch, but they have not moved, done anything. They haven't been biopsied. So we just kind of let them do their thing and just monitor.
Yeah, that's, it's so much all at once. And so like, tell me in terms of your relationship, you guys got married and then immediately with the cancer thing and stuff like that. How has the NET stuff impacted that?
He's like, I hit the jackpot. I could not imagine going through what we've gone through with anyone else. But really from the beginning, it was kind of just like, okay, all right, well, let's do this. The doctor who diagnosed me I had done a biopsy and didn't get the results for a week, and I was still in the hospital, and I was in a different hospital nonetheless. And I found out by a doctor I had literally just met who assumed I knew the biopsy results and didn't. And he just looked at us and went, okay, well, it's malignant. So anyways, and it's me and my husband in this hospital room,
Right.
and we just kind of look at each other and we're like, okay, and then he went on to explain the procedure he was going to do as far as like some embolization and things like that. And then at the end was like, any questions? And we're like, yeah, can we like roll all the way back to the beginning? He's malignant. Yeah. And so no information, was told it's carcinoid, good cancer, all, the cliches that we've all heard. And I went to my procedure, and then me and my husband just kind of were like, all right, let's do this. Okay.
Yeah.
So we went at it head first. I dove in. I have a binder and notebooks, and we got no information or help from the doctor. So it was up to us to figure out what was going on, which realistically was up to me because my husband is not like a studier as I am. So I just hit the internet, and it was through research that finally I connected the dots from carcinoid to neuroendocrine, and figured out where I needed to be and what I needed to do. And my husband just through the journey, just whatever I wanted, just support.
That's great.
Support. Yeah. A pillar.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Something that we brought up earlier is about how young you are and stuff.
Yes.
We have had quick conversations about people's reactions and stuff like that. So, I mean, when people find out that you are a neuroendocrine patient or a cancer survivor or somebody living with it, I know that but you're so young. Because that's why I want you on this podcast, to kind of show that there are people who are young who have these things going on. Mm-hmm. But besides you're so young, I know you said you had a list of wild things that you've heard.
Yeah.
Lay a few on us here.
Well, to go back to the young portion of it, I forgot to add, it was a week after I turned 25 that I was diagnosed. So
right.
That in there too. My birthday hit in the middle of all of that as well. 25, I can rent a car and have cancer. It was great. It was a great time. But I've had clinicians have been my biggest honest, like, shock factor of the things people have said to me. My most recent one, I had the doctor tell me, but you're so young. Yeah. And to have a doctor say that was very off-putting. I went in because I thought I had COVID and I needed steroids. I needed something. And she looked at me and goes, well, it's just like, what do you want? And I was like, well, I would like a little kind of backup protection. Is there anything further we can do? Like, I have one lung. And she looked at me and says, why would you only have one lung? What
kind of bedside manner is that?
Look, I live in Virginia. I don't think it exists out here for the most part. And we're just going to leave it at that. Because, I mean, all these stories, same area. And I'm like, cancer? And she was like, you're so young. What kind of cancer? Like, what? I mean, for one, thank you for asking and not assuming lung cancer. But I mean, apparently it was in my lung. Like,
right.
And I'm like, neuroendocrine. And she goes, well, in that case, if that's the case. And I'm like, what do you mean if that's the case, lady? Like,
yeah.
So those have been wild. And then you look so great, but you have hair.
Right.
That's my favorite. But you have hair. Well, I mean, yeah, I have hair. Not all, you don't have to be bald to have cancer.
Right.
Just wow, people, the cancer. You can tell me you have the tell me about the cancer.
Right.
Yeah. It's just people's reactions are just honestly comical. It's kind of fun, the shock value.
Yeah. So something that I'm super impressed with is the fact that you, like you said, you dove in head first. You found out round about COVID and stuff like that. and you've taken it upon yourself, as opposed to, not bashing anybody or anything, but you have decided to become super active in the community and super active with NCAN. You're basically considered another daughter to my mom, So like, what made you, especially, since things are looking good on your prognosis and stuff, what made you want to get involved? And, I've been around it for 20 years. So when things start to quiet down with the health things, people tend to fall off when it comes to
Yeah.
like advocacy and being involved with it. So tell us a little bit about why you got so involved with the advocacy end of it, and also why you continue to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So my whole experience was very unsettling for both me and my husband, as far as the lack of information we were given. And then to find out it's an outdated term, and to find out, as you get into it, just really how just nonchalantly a lot of doctors treat neuroendocrine, and have this idea and kind of attitude towards it on it's not a big deal. And then as I was researching and finding out that it was a big deal, I was horrified.
Sure.
My breaking point was not I have cancer. My breaking point was the doctor told me I was fine, and it turns out I am fine, but I'm not, though. If I hadn't have advocated and decided to do this research, I very well could have set myself up in the future for a shorter life with health issues, for not knowing that this is kind of a lifetime thing, and that it does have a high recurrence rate and things like that. So that brought me to other people, this needs to be a thing. Like, people need to know, because not everyone is as like head first. Like I said in the beginning, my husband isn't, I am. We balance each other in that aspect. And so getting involved, I was like, I want to get involved. I need to process this. I need to get the information out. So I actually started my own blog to help myself kind of process what I was doing.
Sure.
But also I figured, like, if I could share maybe a little bit on public and Facebook, maybe someone else in my area might be getting the same good cancer diagnosis and are saving themselves from kind of what I had in the dark, and possibly going forward in the dark if they see the story shared.
Sure.
And then, of course, NCAN itself, I actually got into a Lugnoid group through another website, and then I met Wendy, and Wendy told me about NCAN, and I was like, oh, I keep seeing that name, but I didn't know what it was. Like, tell me more. And her and I met, and she was a great support, being a lung patient as
Sure.
well. And then she turned me on. She introduced me to your mom, so Mary Ann. And then, of course, I had just gotten married, so me and my husband were talking about starting a family. So my thing is can I have kids? Can I have a normal life? And Mary Ann actually was like, actually, my daughter, who's a patient, has had a daughter since then, and I want you to talk to her. So out of it was kind of planned, but not planned. Mary Ann called me and goes, here, talk to Trisha, and handed Trisha the phone.
Sounds
and
like mom.
Yeah. And knowing you guys now, I'm like, Trisha.
Right.
But then I was like, I'm on the other end, terrified. I'm like, I'm talking to this random person, and I come off with a very big personality, but I'm actually very social anxious. So I was like, gosh, what is she going to tell me? Over 2 hours later, we were on the phone and had been talking the entire time.
Yeah.
And of course, now she's one of my best friends, and I just dove into it and have continued with it. And even though I'm Ned, no evidence of disease, as we keep hearing and as we see it's important to share, I'm Ned now. In 3 years, it could be back, and it could be back with a vengeance. A couple of your past patient guests have stated how the years in between where they were good, and then all of a sudden, and it's not just back in one area, it's back in multiple areas.
Right.
And so to kind of put it in the back burner and to give up on advocacy and spreading the awareness only when it's pertinent in my health, kind of does a disservice for my possibility of health in the future. The more awareness, the more treatments, the longer we can live with this.
Awesome answer. That's an awesome answer. So in terms of getting good care,
yeah,
what kind of tips would you give to a brand new patient?
I've got a couple tips for a brand new patient. But the first tip is find a doctor you mesh with. And you're going to hear it. You're just going to, a net specialist, you find patients who really have lucked out and found a oncologist or even a specialty doctor who has been willing to, branch out and learn about neuroendocrine to help them. But that's few and far between. Sure. You don't normally have mainstream doctors who are willing to look at it like that. So a specialist is always great, and an oncologist that you mesh well with. And then also it's multidisciplinary. So like you're going to have other doctors. My list of doctors is, through the roof, ranging from UVA to VCU to, in between, Vanderbilt with Dr. Ramirez. And just knowing that it's okay to shop around for a doctor and to see a doctor. I saw a net specialist who is big in Virginia who I did not mesh well with and did not like. So I went somewhere else. And that's okay to do that. Yeah. And then the other thing is just set you and your family up for success no matter what it looks like. Positive attitude sets you up for success in treatment going forward, and their attitudes around it. I feel like if I had been down in the dumps, or if I didn't have such a different outlook to it, I may have dragged my husband kind of down on that level with me. And I feel like he was really higher because of the way I was handling it. And with that, which is a really weird thing to be an advocate for, but I'm an advocate for a living will, and, having that type of thing on file, just because you don't want your family to have to make the decisions. If this does go the other way, then, we do have a lot of hope and we have a lot of faith, and we talk about the long-term, patients who live with this, but we lost a young girl in our community recently, and it does happen. Yeah. And having like a living will and an advance directive, it really helps your family. I went into this, me and my husband hadn't been married 2 months before I was having my lung removed. And we sat down, and at 25 years old, we went through the whole thing, filled it out, got it notarized, signed, and he had it laid out for him if I did not come out the other side. And what we leave for our caregivers is just as important on how we live and care for ourselves. And it's okay to have that conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, it's a hard conversation to have, but, you seem to, your husband seems to be a really, supportive and like a rock. So That's really awesome that you have that, for sure.
Yeah. And it's just, I know it's a taboo thing to talk about, and I've listened to some other patients, and we go to these conferences. I attend them. I help work them, and just other things like that. I've seen that people kind of have a harder time with is the other side of preparing and what it kind of looks like mentally to do that.
Yeah. 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 We're with our upcoming conferences, we are going to start to kind of get more of like the palliative care and, talk about the setting up of wills and things like that. Cause it is a very real conversation. It's not the one we really want to have, but it's the one you have to have for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
Your family needs to know what your wishes are, and you need to do that for them to help put their minds at ease, because the diagnosis is more than just yourself.
Sure. Absolutely.
My little soapbox right there. It's just the one thing no one talks about.
Yeah. No, I think it's important. And again, people are going to go, she's so young. Why is she talking about this? But it's important. Yeah. You have to. Now, why? Two other really quick questions.
No, you're fine.
Why do you think it's so important for a patient to be involved with their care?
Um,
Because you get a lot of people
no,
who go
yeah.
in going and okay, whatever the doctor says, that's the word and that's the way we go.
Yeah, and I kind of laughed at that, not for misunderstanding, but kind of to stop myself from just blurting things out. Really, ultimately, our bodies, our health, our treatment plans, it's our responsibility. We have a responsibility to ourselves and our family to ensure that we are getting the best treatment possible. And to that, you just have to advocate for yourself. And there's just no other way around it. And this isn't other cancers where, trying to say this without offending other cancers, like where you say the cancer and immediately you've got an acceptance of a color, a ribbon, a month, you've got this backing, you've got this foundations, you've got, this is more of a obscure thing. And without advocacy, you're not going to necessarily get the level of care you can and necessarily get treatment best fit for you. And that kind of goes back to why got so big into NCAN and the advocacy, because not a lot of people know to advocate for themselves or know how to advocate for themselves. Mm-hmm. So as patients with big voices like me, that's that advocacy. It's the only way we're going to get better treatment, the only way we're going to get better care.
Absolutely. And last but not least, what's your tips for a new patient to, like when they get diagnosed? What is their first steps, do you think, after you've been diagnosed? What is your next step to informing yourself?
Educate yourself. So you've been diagnosed. You've now got that knowledge of your diagnosis. It's now time to educate yourself. Were our healthcare systems overworked, patients are just overrunning. There's not enough providers to care for us. So when we are coming in and out of that and we are seeing specialists, we are seeing a narrow vision, which is why we're zebras, because we're seeing those hoofbeats being horses, which is the normality which we need. But when we're getting these zebra diagnosis, we're not going to get the level of information that other diagnoses could have. So you have to educate yourself, and educating yourself is going places like NCAN, going to their webpage or support groups, talking to other patients, things like this. It's just education. There's only so far listening to the providers can get you, especially with our type of cancer.
For sure.
Yeah.
So what you do some work with Wendy in the Raleigh area. So where could people find you guys and the work that you guys are doing and some of the support group meetings you guys have?
Absolutely. So we actually are going back and forth from North Carolina, Virginia. It kind of opens up to our level of members. So the next one is going to be this spring, probably May or June. We have not set a date yet. We got to correspond calendars. Possibly in the Richmond area. We are not sure with that either. I have another patient in the group who had a suggestion for a great meeting place. So we're looking into that and setting that up. We have the Virginia NCAN chapter page on Facebook. So definitely if any of our North Carolina, Virginia, anyone listening, find us there. More information than, of course, the NCAN website. We'll have my email to reach out to me, Wendy, if you guys need anything, and more information on the meetings there. And the last one was actually at Duke. We had some talks with patients and then had a doctor actually come in and present some great information. So they are valuable in both community and information.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and for all the things you do for NCAN and for the zebras out there. Once again, everybody, please remember for everything NCAN and anything that you need to know, our monthly live stream, Q&As, our podcasts, the conference videos that are coming out. We just released our Silver Spring, Maryland one, and we're going to be releasing our Omaha, Nebraska one relatively soon. Tons and tons of information. That's all on the NCAN website at netcancerawareness.org. On our social medias, we are at netcanceraware, and please make sure you check out the YouTube for this podcast if you're listening, because you can see us if you want.
I had to do my hair and makeup.
Exactly.
I was like, oh no.
So everybody, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time on Nets Get Real.